Thanks, Rob. All right, I have 15 tabs and 5 minutes, and we're gonna give this a go. All right, everyone, listen up. So, okay, so how many of us has built use spec-driven development? Raise your hand if you have. All right, that's a good amount. Good consistency. How do you build a harness and you're happy with the results? Harness means that instead of using like agent directly, you're using harness layer. All right, that 1, 2, 3. How many of us put that harness in a 24/7 loop because you wanted to just do things? All right, that's 1. All right, so basically that's what today's talk is about. It's kind of like this. I was working on this before Open Cloud team thing, which I was a little bit disappointed. So I had like everyone, right? We start coding, we start prompting. Spectrum was super big. Christmas harness came a thing. I built lots of harness, and then here today we're talking about continuous agents. And if I have like the 4 tiers, right? Everyone starts with the left. You do ad hoc prompting. You adding specs, you adding skills, you adding harnesses to kind of build great things. And now we're talking 24/7. That's why not? And then when I was going on this journey, I didn't think that I would have that much deterministic pieces. But I ended up having a crazy amount of TypeScript code for this because I wanted everything to be more done my way versus done agentically. As we all build agents and harnesses, we all need to mix in bit of deterministic and agentic. Unfortunately for me, all this stuff, the loop itself, the executive loop, it is deterministic. It's running on top of PM2, which is all deterministic. However, there are agentic modules and skills, which we'll get into a lot during this talk. That kind of drives a lot of the what I call the executive layer. The executive layer is kind of the executive function. It's why Open Claude the way it is. What is unique about my thing is I have worker agents that's really good at coding, and it has its own separate set of skills and agents that's separate from the executive agents. So think about the management team and a working team. That's how we best describe the two separations. And eventually there's reporting, there's retrospectives, there's escalations, and what type of all that. All right, the executive loop. Again, this is deterministic. I code all this in JavaScript. I could have made it more agentic, if you will, right? Just kind of literally have it be a set of prompts. But here, there's actually a literal TypeScript that goes through all the phases. That does all that. Second, we now have this thing like how do you select workers? How do you break things down, right? So I wanted this thing to build, I don't know, the next Adobe Experience Manager. Someone else does this with me. Well, I wanted to build something great. I want to build the next Facebook, right? Those takes agents maybe 24 hours, 40 hours to do, right? How do you do that? Well, you break them down into tasks and have tasks be self-validatable. So there's a whole executive function that does that. And this is the code that kind of samples it. And then lastly, I kind of want to break away from Claude. I'm a huge Claude person. PC Claude forever, pay them millions, hundreds of dollars every month. But this one, we're talking about separating, not just using Claude, but using Kimi K2, right? It's a lot cheaper. It's basically Claude distilled, and then uses Codex. So like I'm breaking part of having my worker do different things, and how do I make my skills different? The short answer, my decision I chose is that instead of having different skills for each agent, I have a pre-prompt for each agent to kind of get it in the mindset of that agent. All right, yeah, and the skills is super big. So when 1.0 came along, when I started building that, I didn't use skills whatsoever at the executive level nor at the worker level. A big 2.0 refactor is that instead of having random prompt files sitting inside of my code base, at some point I had 40 different prompt files, which they're very messy when it gets loaded. All that got switched to skills and broken up between executive and worker. Oh yes, here we go. This is another thing. So it says executive skills, worker skills, and then kind of things are divided up in 2 different layers. And lastly, the last one is a little bit something that's not working. This is not working. This is important to say it's not working. This is not working as well as it should. This is the executive validation loop. Right now, I actually get a Discord notification and a Notion graph. So like, I can see what my agent worked on overnight, right? So my agent actually has its own identity now. She's the name of my grandmother, just remixed a little bit. And then she kind of has her own Gmail. She has her own Notion space. She has her own Discord accounts. She messages me, she does Notion stuff, and then this is me, my Discord, getting updates from my agent. And this is something that my agent built, right? So this is something that I've been with Accenture for 10, 12 years, consulting forever. Building things are hard, right? It takes time, takes a lot of things. And the goal here is to kind of, instead of perfecting the output, you perfect the input, or you perfect the harness. If you don't like either, if you think you're only 80% there, throw away the output. This evening, I did a retrospective with my AI on what didn't, and we have this retrospective file here. We will show code since we're going to show code here. So yeah, and I did a totally retrospective, what went well, what went wrong. But when we actually have a lot of amazing work done through a 32-hour step harness running process over 7 hours through Kimi K2. What didn't go well is that it's really bad at end-to-end testing. It's really good at testing each of the 7 strings of a flow, but you never test end-to-end because I never told it to. So instead of fixing the output tonight, what I'll do is toss away the whole thing and have AI run another 8 hours again on it. And that's the mentality I want to kind of, what I'm learning from doing the harness. How many time, Rob? All right, cool. Cool. Lucky for us, that is our last slide. So, and I know I talk really fast. It's a lot of work. And then if folks wants to go on this journey, recommend building harnesses first before put it into an endless loop. You know, still talk to your harness versus having your harness talk to you. And harnesses is probably where the sweet spot is for professional work, right? And this is just for fun. The 24-hour agent, that's for fun. Yes.
What's an example of a continuous problem, like more than 24 hours, that you've had to work on? Because when I'm building a harness, what I find is I look for specific like triggers in like a producer-consumer sort of environment or signals or things like that. That's generally going to kick off the next task. So I'd vote just curious what like a long.
Yeah, great question. Being very humble here, longest out around this is 9 hours. And how I got to around 9 hours is by giving an overly complex task. So you're thinking about database layers and harnesses for the database. You're thinking about a UI layer. You're basically building something fairly that would be extremely time sensitive. And you're trusting your executive agent the ability to break down tasks, right? So like while the executive loop is very deterministic, right? So I've been run, but the ability to interpret tasks and break them down into 30 tasks, 40 tasks, 60 tasks. That's a very agentic. Of course, the bigger problem that you would give it, the more tasks it brings. And then a little bit spec-driven development, how I get to a bigger task is by giving a really big spec package. At that point, it's not even just a prompt anymore, right? It's way bigger than the context window itself. And that's what you kind of have to give it. You have to give it something very challenging to work in so that, at least for my thing, it takes time to break it down and build on it. Yes, Bob.
So for that 9-hour run, how long did you spend like filling out the specification for like what you were going to build? Like how much time did you put into that?
Great question. So the whole tasking process is this is where probably my fault is compared to, that's like most people here, raise your hand if you looked at the Anthropic loop, not the Ralph loop, but the Anthropic loop. They published that 24-hour running agent. Yeah. So they spend a decent amount of time breaking things up, but they have agents pick up their own tasks agentically. What I do is a little bit less upfront. So I kind of just size the work to the reasonable amount of work that we think it would take. For me, it's 60 turns. And I have each one has a 200 turn. And that's my goal of breaking things down is by number of turns. So the more complexity you give it, the bigger, the more tasks you're going to get, and the more tasks you're going to get, and you're going to do well. The one thing that I'm noticing is that for this run, as we started, because my tasks were not refined enough, and they were taking over 200 turns, and it was failing, and I had the 1 hour limit of each task. Because it is an agentic continuous agent, unlike a harness, I want to have higher power tasks that come in first and cut off the other tasks, and kind of switch stuff. But yeah, so that's what I do, Rob. I don't know if it's good, but that's what I do. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that in the current generation of your application, you were testing each individual quite well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, great question. I think it's both on the executive side as well as on the worker side. So on the executive side, I need to plan that in. I think I really messed up by the current iteration. I never had end-to-end testing from the very beginning in terms of, and I had end-to-end testing at the module level, but not the holistic level. So there needs to be a process to do that. So executive-wise, to break that down. And the worker level, it's important to focus on not just testing what you're building, make sure it looks pretty and all that, and it works, but the whole flow. So there's definitely a bit more rigor in that. Just like real life, right? You have to have the management rigor as well as a team realizing what they're doing. And it's going to burn more tokens, and maybe that's just what I'll have to do, at least in the short term.
How do you keep your agent aligned over
A great question. Yeah, so being transparent, that's my harness is better than my 24-hour agent. My harness is better doing that. Right now, I'm not doing a good job of doing that whatsoever. But it is open source. So it is, Rob made me ask me to open source this. I did open source, and I will continue to build on it. If anyone wants to try it out, feel free. The code is out there, and hopefully, someone checks it out.
那是可能知好我也
we go back and take the model 就生开咯生开 feedback loop or the manner.
Yeah, good question. So what I do is I have a retrospective thing. I literally do a retrospective of my agent. I tell it what's wrong. I tell it what's wrong. So we kind of both trying to came out of what was done correctly and what could be done better. And that gets fed into either improving the input, right? Remember the prompt packet, right? Like many tokens of large size things. You got to add more details to it, right? So you're more consistent, and also fixing the both executive agents and the work agent skills. I don't want to be very skill focused right now. Like my first 1.0, no skills. Now I'm all skills. I'm only on skills. So if the skill's not right, like we need to fix the skills. And so that next time we run, AI has a better idea what it's doing. So I have a better product. All right, thank you so much.